want to do a Bob Marley poster, my version of the movie poster. I wanted to do something that I felt resonated to me, who Bob Marley was, but I also wanted to create something that was going to be special and connect with all of his fans and hopefully his family and whoever sees the poster. And so that creates a daunting challenge. I mean, you know, I never met Bob Marley, so that means I have to draw my visual reference of and my emotional connection to whatever I see in video or photos of him. And I just researched as much as I could. Fortunately, there are a lot of imagery on Google. Obviously, a lot of the images are copyrighted, but for me, I knew I was going to draw and paint these, so I wasn't worried about that. And I knew I was going to put something together that hopefully hasn't been seen before. And when I looked for reference images, I knew I wanted to grab far more than what I would need, right, for the poster, for multiple reasons. When I do the research, the idea is to not look just for pictures that will actually be in the shot, but I'm looking for pictures that show me who he is, show me his whole personality. And then by having all these visuals, hopefully that gives me the direction of the poster. So it was hard to find some images that haven't been regularly seen before. I had stumbled across this one website, and man, I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to go in my history now to see where it was. But it looked like it was, I think, from a book that was published, and it was, I think, family photos. So there was a little bit more insight, which to me, that's like the holy grail for reference material, because they're going to have images that show us who he is. So once I get the images, I go right into trying to come up with an idea. So for this poster, I work completely different than I normally do. I love traditional paint, and I also do a lot. Well, I mostly do digital commercially now, right? That's the only thing people really want or ask for a lot of times for commercial work. My original thought was I was going to hand paint this the way I used to do it way back in the day. But life projects, deadlines, real life projects came into play, so I realized quickly I had to do it digitally. So it's like, okay, let's go digital. And as I was doing it, I realized the easiest way to do this, because I could sort of save myself a lot of time, was I took several images and I ran a filter over all the photos and just made it just pure black and white, no gray tone, nothing. I just want the graphic representation of these images. I start placing them I placed them inside a Photoshop and just cut them up, moved them around, free transformed them, painted on top of them to get my general idea of what I thought. So it came down to essentially the same idea with 3 small little minor variations. And so it gave me my direction. And so I was off and running. And so with that, I just immediately start going into sketching mode. Now, at this stage, traditionally, I would have drawn or sketched this stuff out. Or if I were like super old school, you take the images, like the old-fashioned movie poster style. The way the technique was done, you would, if you have an opaque projector or something like that, you project the images onto your canvas, and then you draw right onto that. So for what I did was, I really didn't have to do that because it was digital. So all I had to do was draw and paint, or sketch out each little piece individually. And then I just compiled it all as a smart object. They were all smart objects, and dropped it into Photoshop, which is great. So then I could scale them up, down, and then if I need to go back in and refine the sketch, I could go inside the smart object. Or once it got to a certain point, I just drew on top of everything in the composition once I knew I had it locked down. And at that point, it was all good. I had my direction, I had the pencil blocked in, and all I had to do now was just add the color. Now, when I designed this, I wanted to make sure I had a design theme, and hopefully you'll see it when you see the finished composition. It's very, very subtle, and that's how I like a design theme to be, but it's there, and hopefully you'll see it at the end, right? So you're saying, well, what's a design theme? So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use tone and value and color to sort of lead your eye, and I'll make invisible shapes for the composition, like triangles, squares, circles. I'll do things like that. I'll use, let's say sometimes I'll do a design theme where I use repetitive circles in a design. So this one had one simple shape, which I think it's very obvious when you look at it, but I'm not going to tell you what the shape is. I'll see if you can figure it out on your own. But that was sort of my go-to. So when I started applying color and getting closer to the finish, I always had to make sure that I adhered to that design theme, that design sentiment, and make sure that nothing distracted from that. So if I had values or details on the outside figures of their heads and things like that, I had to paint them in a way that they wouldn't overtake the overall design, and also the focal point, which is the central figure of Bob playing the guitar, singing to the mic. And yeah, I mean, this was a lot of fun once I got to this point. It took more time than I thought as well, because again, I mentioned before, is I'm teaching and I have all these different things, so I had to break this whole thing down and do this in sections, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. And and again, I was so excited because I wanted to get it done and give this away, but it just took more time than I thought. Now, one thing that I do a lot in my pieces, especially digital, is I don't like my pieces to look digital. I like it to have texture. I like it to feel like someone actually put their hands in it and really painted it. It's just the way I roll. I can paint super slick and hyper photorealistic. I can do matte paintings, all that stuff. I have a lot of different techniques that I have in my back pocket, but when I have my personal choice, I totally will lean into the traditional aspect and making it look real and tangible. So one of the methods I will do with some of the paintings is I will use canvas texture, or with this project, I use gesso panels. And because in real life, I like to, put really thick textural gesso, I learned that from really two people, well, a lot of people actually, but two people influenced it for me. One was my teacher, Kazu Sano. If you guys don't know who he is, he did the Return of the Jedi Star Wars movie poster. And then another person who did this a lot, you see it in the texture of his posters, is Drew Struzan. So I love that texture. And then there's there's so many. David Grove did this. There's so many people. There was a guy back in the day, I don't even know, I haven't said this name in a while. It was a Dudash, I think. I think it was Michael Dudash. There's some other people too. But anyway, I love that texture. So for me, I gesso as many of these panels down, and I like to have them stacked around, and I scan them in, and I have them at my disposal. And then I can composite them together and overlap them on top of my piece in any way that I want. And then it gives me texture, and I'll sit that up underneath the poster, and then I'll put it on top of the poster on the back end, sandwich it. And just by having that in itself, gives it a very interesting look. Now, another thing that I did with this poster, because I was also thinking about Drew Struzan, but not just Drew, there's one other artist that when I was doing my color and refining it, I was shocked, but Alphonse Mucha, he came into mind. I'm a huge fan, but I'm more of a fan of his Slav epic pieces. I made a pilgrimage to go all the way to Czech Republic just so I could see them. And this is when they were way, 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 way out in the countryside. And that's a whole story in itself to talk about how I got there. It was, man, what a story. But anyway, when I was doing the color, I did unintentionally. I saw that I was channeling some ways of how he did his color in one of his paintings, and how the colors were morphing in and out of each other. And I was like, wow, I was completely shocked that I did that. And what that goes to show is like everything that we see, it gets filed in the back of our memory. And and it's like a lot of us, we would like to think we're these really special original people, but we're really just piggybacking on the greats and all of the stuff that we've just captured in our visual Rolodex or piggy bank, or however you want to think of it. Okay, and so with that color and with the pencil, I made sure with the pencils that some of the pencil roughness stayed in there. I don't always do that. Usually I paint the pencil lines out, but I wanted it in this one because for me, when I think of Bob Marley, I think of Rasta and all of that kind of that vibe. It's like, for me, it's like, it's I don't think of a photo for a movie poster. I think of a painting. I think of pencils. I remember when I was down in the Caribbean, I was in St. Kitts, and I got one of the bowls like that was cut. It was like, it's earth. Man, who did I get that from? But that bowl was so awesome, and so it connects to the whole spiritualness and all of that. So that's why I wanted all of that roughness and that vibe to come through. And I also just wanted to show every aspect of this man, the spiritual, the I'm gonna say rebel, but not rebel in the sense of like violence or anything, like, but someone who had a mission, and he did his mission, and he was willing to pay the price for that. I think that was really important. I wanted to see the passion in his face. I wanted to feel the passion. And so these were all really important things. And so I hope I pulled it off. I hope I pulled it off.
It's so good! I'm so excited!